Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. In March, Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt filed a lawsuit against Branson-based televangelist Jim Bakker. Schmitt's office alleged that Bakker had touted a product called Silver Solution as a treatment for the coronavirus. Consumers, Schmitt suggested, could be victimized by the false information. But a former Missouri Attorney General says Jim Bakker is the real victim. That man, Jay Nixon, was Missouri Attorney General from 1993 to 2009, and he is also, of course, the state's former governor. He is joining us today to explain what he sees as the First Amendment issues at the heart of the case against Jim Bakker. So, former Governor Jay Nixon, welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be with you, and thanks for having me on this afternoon. Really appreciate it, Sarah.
Now, you filed a motion to dismiss on Monday, and in it, you argued that this is actually a case about Jim Bakker's rights to practice his religion. How so?
Well, we believe this isn't a case about consumer protection. It's about religious freedom. And I think in order to understand that real quick, let me take just 20 seconds and go through kind of the facts of the case. First of all, the product, these silver immunity boosters, are very widely used. They're sold at CVS, Walmart, Amazon, GNC. These are immunity boosters a lot of folks use all across the country.
So this is not poison. This is not something that is damaging people.
No, it's taken daily by literally hundreds of thousands of folks across the country. Like I say, CVS, Walmart, Amazon, GNC, no lawsuits against them for consumer fraud for these types of products. The second is the thinness of this particular consumer case on the facts. I mean, it's very clear from the tapes that Bakker did not claim or state that Silver Solution is a cure for COVID-19. A representative of the manufacturer, Dr. Selman, was on the show and said it hadn't been tested for a coronavirus, and all Bakker said was, yeah, and then moved forward. So the bottom line is the underlying case here is also extremely thin. I think a significant reach, and I deeply believe that everyone, regardless of their background, deserves to be treated equally by the law. And Pastor Bakker was engaged in a religious practice and speech during this show, as he is during his daily shows out of Blue Eye, Missouri.
Now, the Missouri Attorney General's office, just for the record, we did reach out to them to see if they wanted to make a statement about this, and they said they would have no comment because this litigation is pending. But as you say, their case seems to rest on something that is a pretty innocuous conversation. They have a transcript in this lawsuit of Jim Bakker talking to this woman, Cheryl Selman. Tell us who this Cheryl Selman is. You say she works for the company that sells Silver Solution?
Yeah, she's a representative. She's a naturopathic doctor. She got her degree from Trinity University and Trinity College in Indiana, and she is somebody that advises on immunities and all that sort of stuff. But she was a guest on the show and as a representative of the manufacturer of the product.
Okay, so she's a guest on the show, and she says, this is according to a transcript from the Attorney General's office, your client, Jim Bakker, says, this influenza that is now circling the globe, you're saying that Silver Solution would be effective. She says, well, let's say it hasn't been tested on this strain of the coronavirus, but it has been tested on other strains of the coronavirus and has been able to eliminate it within 12 hours. Your client, Jim Bakker, says, yeah. And then this woman, Selman, says, totally eliminate it, kills it, deactivates it. Your client says, yeah. So I have to give you this. In their own transcript, all that he says is yeah twice. This is hardly a ringing endorsement. I'm wondering, by this standard, could I be in trouble if you started trying to tout supplements on the air?
Well, if I say something crazy, I'm sure you're prepared to say yeah, and move to either the next guest or the first opportunity to get off the paper, off the radio. I mean, Bakker is an experienced communicator. Clearly, yeah means let's keep on moving. Let's get beyond that. The bottom line, the facts are clear. I mean, Pastor Bakker was in the middle of a religious show. I mean, this is a religious practice and speech. I mean, and the filming and the broadcast is an expression of their underlying sincerely held religious beliefs, and those beliefs are focused on preparing spiritually, mentally, and physically for the second coming. They preach the book of Revelation.
And how does he see this Silver Solution as fitting into the second coming?
Well, it's just that you have to have your body physically ready, and immunities are strong. They need to be strong so that if in essence, pestilence or whatever comes, it doesn't get the strong. It doesn't get people that are taking care of, whether you're taking zinc for a cold or iron for this or calcium. That part of their mission is to make people spiritually, mentally, and physically strong and ready.
I don't know. I'm kind of ready to start saying yeah here. Like, I feel like the link between these supplements and the end times, it seems a little tenuous to me.
Once again, you're not a significant follower, I wouldn't imagine, of some of this.
That's true.
This religion. That's one advantage that I think that I have in my years of being out in our state. There's a whole lot of different religions. I've been to every church you could possibly imagine. I remember one time we were down in Jefferson County before I was even in office, and we were wondering some of these religions, what motivated them and all that sort of stuff. And this lawyer turned and said, "Listen, I don't know what to say if some 16-year-old is killed on the highway, but some of these preachers do. They can connect to people." I think that sometimes people need to really appreciate the difficult situation some people are in and how they're reaching for some sort of spiritual help, and how these types of pastors connect and, quite frankly, turn folks' lives around the way Jim Bakker's life has been turned around since his problem back in the 70s and 80s.
So, I'm conceding your point on the yeah-yeahs. He's not making this ringing endorsement here, and I do get the religious freedom issue of here's a man preaching, but at the same time, he does benefit from these silver supplement sales, right? I mean, isn't this is a paid advertiser for his television program? Does that change the equation at all?
Well, these are what they call love gifts. However, you make a donation to the church. A portion of that goes to the mission of the church, and a portion of that is to pay for the product. And he is an employee of that. So this is one of the ways that they support their mission. Not only silver products, they sell food products and other things of that, and have for a long time. I mean, this product has been sold for at least 10 years. And so this is a situation in which he had been doing this. They had been doing this. Their church, in essence, had been doing this, and one guest comes on the show, and now the Attorney General's office wants to shut them down. I think it's a targeting of them because of their religious portions of their speech.
Now, we put this question out to some of our listeners on our social media accounts this morning, and I got to say, not all of our listeners are huge fans of Jim Bakker, your client. Lisa Overby Langley wrote on our St. Louis on the Air Facebook page, "It's really difficult to get past Mr. Bakker's past. If you watch him for more than 3 minutes, he preys on people's fears after helping to create those same fears. Is he a villain? Not sure. Is he a snake oil salesman and a man lacking a moral character? Why, yes, I think he is." Do you find that people just want to judge this guy because he has had this checkered history?
He's had a very checkered history. This is a fellow that went to jail, completely ruined. I mean, when the PTL club came to an end, Jerry Falwell took over, but then he came to Missouri, and for the last 10 or 15 years, especially focused in the last 10 years, he's turned things around and has been preaching with Morningside in this broadcast around the country. I respect people that can come back from the problems that he had. I think he's been relatively quiet to most people because you preach this to your followers, to the folks that are listening. But the bottom line is certainly we all recognize that Jim Bakker has made significant mistakes, and he's paid for those mistakes. But I just really believe that everyone, regardless of their background, deserves to be treated equally and fairly by the law. And in this situation, we feel like he's being targeted because of both his background and the religious nature of what he's selling.
One of the other comments we got through our social media, Kim says, Bakker doesn't have a right to peddle poison. And I know that, you're making the case this silver solution is sold in stores all around the area. But in terms of his religious freedom, are there any limits to that? Like, let's say he's touting something that's truly harmful. Let's say he was telling people to ingest Lysol to stop the coronavirus. Would he be protected as long as this is something that subsidized his preaching and came in the course of that religious television show?
Well, as long as it's treated totally equally by everybody. If you look at the cases, the Supreme Court cases, you look at that Gonzalez case out of 2006, that were there a tea, an illegal drug tea, the Supreme Court ruled 8-0 unanimously that they could use that. You have a situation where the case out of the Church of Leukemia case said that in Oregon that religious sacrifice of animals is okay. A lot of these things are not things that I would do or want to do, but secular law cannot be used to test the truth or falsity of religious beliefs or teachings. That's the law.
So there's some special carve-outs here for people of faith that if I'm just doing this thing because I'm trying to make a quick buck, I don't have that same protection.
No, you don't. I mean, commercial speech is much different than religious speech. The First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason. It gives you the right to ask me these questions, me the right to believe what I want when it comes to between me and the Lord.
I want to go to the phone lines. Leah is calling from Olivet, and she's got a question for us. Leah, hi, you're on St. Louis on the air.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I appreciate your taking my question. In the context of Jim Bakker conducting this religious service, it was in the context of addressing the pandemic of COVID-19. In inviting somebody who's a representative of a drug company, by virtue of inviting them as a guest onto the show, is already an endorsement. And endorsing and inviting them onto the show in the context of addressing maybe the spiritual issues around how COVID-19 impacts us and what we can do resourcefully and spiritually to address COVID-19 and the impact, the negative impact and ails of COVID-19. I'm just not understanding how you're saying this is a religious, spiritual message when he's invited this drug company, essentially representative, onto the show.
Leah, that's actually a great question. I'm going to turn that over to Governor Nixon.
It really is a great question. I really appreciate it. I mean, the guest, I should note, said this has not been tested for coronavirus. I think that's also important. And quite frankly, talking about coronavirus or plagues and that sort of stuff is not a new theme for Pastor Bakker and his ministry. They feel like preaching the book of Revelations that the second coming is coming soon, potentially, and you have to be prepared for it. I don't think he expected, you can see from the reaction that wasn't, she was not, well, I can't speak to that. I appreciate the question. The bottom line is that this is a product that is being sold on Amazon, being sold at Walmart, being sold at CVS. These types of products are used by hundreds of thousands of people across the country every day. The fact that he feels that, and his religion feels that strengthening your body and strengthening your immunities is important is a religiously held belief they had, and I think protected by the First Amendment.
Now, Governor Nixon, because of that, you're basically saying in your response to this lawsuit that the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act as written is unconstitutional. Could this have impact on other cases if you're successful pushing this for Jim Bakker?
Well, our constitutional challenge is what's called an as-applied challenge. We're focused on what they are doing with the laws as written. We think they have targeted Jim Bakker. We think they're focusing on what is religious speech. The filling of this broadcast is no different than talking about what a pastor is saying from the pulpit. And my golly, in faith and in churches, there are many steps that we all take in our individual religions, and that's why it's so important in this country that you have those individual religion rights and belief rights, and we're hopeful that everybody sees that this is a focus. So when we say coming at it, it's the as-applied challenge, not the fact that there shouldn't be consumer protection laws.
Okay, that makes sense, and I appreciate that legal clarification there. I am not a lawyer in the same way that some of these guests, I guess, we can't vouch for them. You can't vouch for my interpretation of the law. But bottom line, this case was filed now 2 months ago, and I understand we're now at this point where you've now entered, you filed this motion to dismiss. Where do things stand, and what will happen next?
Well, we'll be down in southwest Missouri. That's the Attorney General's office where we'll have the opportunity to respond to the motion, and we'll have a chance to respond to that, and ultimately we will argue this motion down in circuit court down in southwest Missouri, down in depending on which judge takes it, but the counties down there are in far southwest Missouri.
So is this one where you guys are prepared to go to the mat for this? This is not one where you're interested in finding a settlement just to make this go away?
Well, no, we're not litigating for the sake of litigating here. They're the ones that after selling a product for 10 years, one guest comes on, says something hasn't been tested, and says it might be helpful for immunity, and all at once the world is coming down here. So we didn't start this, And our hope would be that we would be able to continue to offer a number of products that we believe, or that the client believes sincerely help folks. But no, we're not trying to carry this on. But when somebody comes at your sermons and says your sermons, when you say make your body strong, take immunity, and a product that has been out there and used all across the country is that product, and you have a guest come on and say, well, it hasn't been tested, it might be useful for coronavirus, that seems to us a long way away from the typical consumer fraud case, and much more a targeting case because of Jim Bakker's background and religious beliefs.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see how all this plays out. And former Governor Jay Nixon, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to talk about all these really important issues.
Absolutely. We appreciate the free form of discussion. It's nice to hear from the audience, the folks calling in, too. This is the First Amendment. It is an important amendment.
Well, thank you so much for that. And we do want to reiterate that we asked the Missouri Attorney General's office for their statement on this, and they did say they'd have no comment because the litigation is pending. So we'll all just have to stay on top of this as the case plays out. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. That's 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.